Starting this company and now having worked with, at this point, hundreds of corporate executives, the level of burnout, the level of disalignment between what they have been doing their entire lives and what they would truly like to step into is massive. And that dissonance, it almost always creates depression. It creates this very visceral, real sense of, I'm not living life on my terms. I really don't have agency over my life. I have bosses who tell me what I need to do and I need to do it. Come Sunday night, I sink into the depths of depression because I know what's waiting for me Monday morning. These are conversations that I have over and over again. And much of it was very true for me when I spent almost 8.5 years in corporate. And I knew there had to be something better out there. I didn't know what, but I knew when I saw it, I would recognize it. And I fell headlong into the world of franchising. And the more I learned about this world, the more I got excited because I said, wow, there really truly is a way for somebody who has spent their career doing A, B, and C to actually take some time. And by the way, it doesn't take forever and a day. We have, over the last 10 years, we have dialed down, and this is our proprietary process. We lead every candidate through roughly a 60-day process. That's it. So in 60 days, you can completely transform the trajectory of your life moving forward. That's what we do. Every person that I meet, the very first question they will say is, so what franchise should I buy? What's the one that's going to make me $1 bajillion? And I would say that is not the right question to ask. The better, the more deliberate question to ask is, what kind of operator am I? Because when we ask that sort of frontal lobe question, the brain immediately goes to work. And then you start to say, I have high sales abilities. I have hired and I've managed a team. I have some pretty good leadership skills. When I was in the army, I did logistics, I did operations, I did marketing, whatever the thing is. And you start to build this capabilities list for yourself. That is the better question to ask. And that is the question that we ask when a candidate comes to us. That's where we begin, not with a brand. There's a lot of brands, but there's only one you. We want to get to know you first before we even start to have a conversation around the brands that would be the right fit for you. So at this point in time, we have a little over 600 franchise brands in our inventory. So these are brands that we have agreements with. We'll bring you financially vetted candidates and candidates who fit the profile of what your ideal franchisee is. And so when we are able to curate that universe of candidates and cull down and bring one candidate that is a perfect fit with a brand, they then go into that, what we call the due diligence process with that particular brand. Again, 60 days. Roughly, we take you through that. We introduce you to a very short list of brands. So many people will say, and this is total FOMO, fear of missing out. Oh, so when I begin with you, are you going to show me 20 different brands? Absolutely freaking not. The point is not to do that. Because if we are really good, like we say we are, and if we are really deliberate and we get to know who you are first, then that pool of brands that really truly fit you become much smaller. This is how this process works. So there's a lot of misperceptions about, do I look at dozens of brands? Do I begin with the brands first? Do I have to spend an arm and a leg, right? Financial myths. Because if I want to make money, I guess I have to spend money. There's a lot of misunderstandings that are still out there that we have to brainwash out of you before we get you started. Through this matching process that we have, we help them find the right franchise brand to invest into and become franchise owners. That was the first service that I started with 10 years ago. But we now have 4 actually different services, all in franchising. We're a franchise advisory, but 4 different things we do. Our second service, and the candidate or the client here is completely different. This is a business owner. And these are business owners who have either a product or a service business. It's a business that is currently profitable, and it is a business that clearly there's a need in the marketplace for that. These business owners come to us and say, look, I spent all my life savings. I have maxed out my credit cards. I have taken loans to grow this business. What I have is pretty freaking fantastic. I want to now take the footprint of this business and take it nationwide. Can you help me turn this business into a franchise? And the answer is yes, we do. That's our second service. When you've become now what we call an emerging franchise brand, you're a new franchise brand, the most immediate thing that you're now looking for are franchisees. You're not a franchise if you don't have franchisees in your system. So that third service is franchise sales. And we have a sales team that essentially becomes your sales team. And we go out there and we recruit the best fitting candidates to become franchisees in your brand. That's service number 3. And then fourth and final, we also have an acquisitions arm. We are always on the lookout for small businesses, typically mom and pop owned. They have a really solid fundamental business proposition. It doesn't matter how long they've run it. They may have one location, they may have multiple locations. Again, could be a product, could be a service. And they're at a point where they're looking to sell and exit out of the business. In those instances, we would look at acquiring the business, bringing it under our fold, optimizing it in different ways where they need optimization, and then in a couple of years, either selling the business again or down the road, potentially turning it into a franchise brand.
You've done a lot of your work with veterans because we've been working together better than half of your 10 years right now.
That's right. We do a lot of work with veteran candidates, and no surprise here, the veteran space really has become as large as it's become for us, really thanks to you guys at 100 Entrepreneurs. We started in the industry, didn't really have a footprint, people didn't really know us. We began working with you, and over time, we've developed a network of partnerships with veteran focused organizations. We do a lot of speaking engagements on the bases locally and around the country. Vets are There is such a wonderful fit between what franchising as a model essentially is and the skill sets and sort of the vibe and the psyche with which veterans come. There's such a wonderful fit, right? But if you think about it, franchising essentially is a model that looks for mission focused operators. Here's our mission. We are looking for you to execute on the playbook that we're going to hand to you. If you can do those two things, you have a very good shot at being successful in our system. And veterans, right? So, very disciplined, the ability to execute on a playbook, the capabilities they come with either be working as part of a team or being able to build a team, focus on the bottom line, focus on that mission. What is it that we are here to do today? And then being able to hit the ground running with that. Those are a couple of the key things that I continue to see over and over again in my veteran candidates.
Great. Can you give us some examples?
I'll give you the example of Ben. And by the way, Ben actually was an attendee at exactly one of these workshops. He had just transitioned out of service. When we met, he said, give me a little time. So I said, fine, do what you need to do, and then let's begin the process. Came to me, we sat down, and very much like I just described, we didn't start with franchise brands. I said, so Ben, tell me about you. Why a franchise and why now? And he was very clear. He said, look, I want to say he was in operations over the last 10, 15 years of his career. He said, look, I've been in operations, I've moved around a lot. And that has destabilized the family. He had young children at the time. And he said, this moving around, this hopping around, it's not necessarily great for a family life. In this next iteration of my life, I want something that allows me to use the skills that I have. One, two, I really want to enjoy what I'm doing. And then three, very importantly, and I remember this like he said this yesterday, it rings in my ears. He said, I want a business that allows me to be at the dinner table by 5 p.m. every day. I will not forget. He was that like granular and crystal clear. I said, okay, we can do that. And so the process that we take every candidate through, it's really again understanding. So, okay, these are your skill sets. These are the capabilities with which you come to the table. And then here are the things that you are looking for this franchise business to give you. By the way, these are lifestyle goals. Like he said, I want to be able to spend more time with my family. That's a lifestyle goal. Wealth building goal. What kind of money do you want to make? In how many years? Third, let's talk about exit planning. Faizun, what do you mean? I haven't even started the business. You're talking about exit planning? Yes. Because if you can start with that in mind, right? Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. If you can start by thinking about where you want to be in this business 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, you will be that much more deliberate about the kind of business you're getting into and how you're going to grow that business over time. And he said, well, it's something I'd never really considered before. I think I'd like to run this business for at least 5, if not more years. And then at that point, I'd like to sell the business. I said, okay, if that's what you're trying to do, then we must build a business that becomes a saleable asset. One of the other things, too, as a bit of a sideway, when a candidate goes in with a robust franchise system, number one, number two, if they are very diligent about following the playbook that's been handed to them, over time, they will build a business that will be typically multiples of the EBITDA that the business is bringing in. So, a mom and pop business, when they go to sell their business, they're typically, if they're pulling in $1 million in top line revenue, you are going to be able to sell it at somewhere at that price or maybe a little bit below or above, but nothing really beyond that, certainly not multiples, unless you have a business where you've really optimized your system's revenue.
Not profit, revenue.
That's exactly right. So that's what we see in the mom and pop space. Now, when you move that same thing into the franchise space, you are seeing multiples that are pretty insane. Now, the multiples differ based on the industry that you happen to be in. One of my most favorites is the home services space. You are seeing businesses that are commanding 5, 7, 10, 12 times multiples on the business that's being sold. We've seen in the last 10, 15 years in home services, there's a huge influx of private equity money that's coming in. These PE partners come in, they acquire the system, they pump an unbelievable amount of resources into that system to optimize whatever areas need to be optimized. Basically, they're getting that system ready for what's called a second sale. That's sort of macro. On a very micro individual level, candidates of mine, right? They invested $150,000, $200,000 all in into ABC business. They did the work, they executed on the playbook, they followed the playbook to a T. 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, they're selling that business for multiples of what they had invested into it. Another thing I hear a lot is, oh, Faizun, I've read about franchises and it feels like I'm buying a job. It is the farthest thing from buying a job. You are buying a system to create an asset. It is that simple. Because think about it, mom and pop business owners, we spend years building the systems. This is what exhausts us. This is why every day doesn't feel like enough because I am running around trying to create everything. But if you already have your SOPs created and you've done your due diligence where you're like, okay, for a franchisee to be successful in this system, they need to do these 10 things. I am really kick ass at 8 of these 10 things. Do I think I'm going to be successful? Heck yeah. I'm going to follow that playbook. And now suddenly you're not worried about creating SOPs. You've hit the ground running. You have hit your break even, and now you're on to profitability that much faster.